The reason why you're so damn successful is because you've trained yourself to be a fighter. I mean, I wasn't going to ask you this, but it's really interesting to us, and we've actually been doing a lot of personal development, just kind of easing into the personal. Do you believe that the difficult beginnings created this person that you are? What did you decide was true about yourself in order to get to where you are and be, the go-getter and the accomplishment woman that you are?
I think it did have a lot to do with it. I tell people all the time that, I didn't have a safety net, so I had to build it. And so there wasn't really that option to just be like, oh, someone else will do it, or, oh, it'll happen. I'll just eventually it'll happen. If I didn't do it and I didn't make it, or I didn't go and earn the money, the money didn't exist, the housing didn't exist. I started working at age 13 under the table, and had been working before that with my dad as an independent contractor, helping him pull wires and rebuild engines and do all this stuff. And so I had the work ethic, and I had the reality that, hey, if we want to eat this week, we have to work. And it doesn't just mean mom or dad works, it means we all work, And so I think having that from an early age really helped develop who I am as a worker. And then, I had a dad that used to always say, you don't work for your boss, but you work for the mom that's working 4 jobs to be able to buy whatever you're selling. And so I think that really instilled kind of a deeper honor in the work that I did. It made me realize that it meant more than just a paycheck or just making a boss happy, but it meant something to someone else, that it could be the only thing that they could get that week. So I do think that not having that safety net and having that work ethic instilled in me young, because we had to have it instilled, helped a lot. And it's a lot of what drives me kind of on a daily basis to just continue leveling up. I tell people all the time, you have to take a step forward in life. You have to keep moving, but why not take a step forward and to the left? Why not, instead of just being a pawn, why not be a knight in a chess game and start making those moves that help you level up every time? And that was one of the things that Friends in Film did for me, is it gave me a formula and an access that I didn't have just on a day-to-day basis. I didn't know that I could just go and start emailing people and that they would actually respond. I knew people I met in person, I knew how to network with them, and I knew how to grow and how to be able to level up that way, but I had never taken it beyond into industries that I didn't know so well, and people that I had never met and I may never see in person. So when I was in high school, I got appointed to the U.S. Air Force Academy. I got presidential, vice presidential, congressional, and senatorial. And so before the age of 18, that was a huge deal for me. But as you also mentioned, that ended up falling through about a month before I was supposed to leave because of my childhood asthma. So I kind of had to start quickly trying to redirect my wheels. And so I applied for a National Honor Society scholarship, and I got that to partially help with school. And then from there, one of the goals that I had getting out of college was to hit the executive suite before I was 30. So at 28, I found myself reporting into a CEO as a global director for engineering. But I realized that on the side of all of my engineering, I had been doing acting. I'd been doing commercial print acting, and I'd been doing commercial acting, and it was something that was kind of fun, and it helped me get my creativity out while I was in this very regimented engineering world. And it got to a point where I was like, I had moved to LA. I was seeing signs everywhere, and I was like, okay, I want to be able to do this. And so from there, utilizing the Get on Shoots method, I was able to very quickly with the program, like you said, I drank it up like it was water. I took every single word in and was like, okay, I'm going to do this like it's my full-time career. This is my full-time investment. And so I started just getting on as many shoots as possible, starting with the freebies. And then from there, I was really blessed that I met a PA in one of my second free shoots that gave up a TJ Maxx commercial because he just wasn't available. And he's like, hey, do you want to take this? Do you want to go and PA on this commercial? And so from there, I got to do a lot of production assisting, and then I got to do wardrobe design on some indies and features. I got to PA on Beyonce's Lemonade, which I think was like the biggest, coolest thing that I've done on a production side, aside from like wardrobe designing a full feature, which was fun. But like, this is Beyonce, so let's be honest, she beats everything. And then I'm a host for Discovery and Science. I've been on the last 4 seasons of Mythbusters as one of their hosts, and I do production in between, because anyone that does acting knows that exclusivities and non-competes is a real part of our life, and filming for only 3 months is the other real part of that. So you get 9 months out of the year that if you're not, an A-list celebrity making millions of dollars a season, you still have to work. And so what I love about Friends in Film is it gives me the ability to continue working in production. I get to stay connected with my peers, but in a way that I'm not messing up my exclusivities. I'm not putting my acting and hosting career at risk. But I'm making better money than I would if I was just going and doing waiting tables or doing something side job-ish.
Yeah.
So
I remember when you were making more money in the film industry than you made as an engineer.
Yes, which was a big deal.
Yeah,
because I was leaving reporting to a CEO level job, so it wasn't a small amount. You're gonna get to a point in your career where you're going to have offers coming in all directions. And we kind of talk about this, like you do the get on shoots method and you're doing the freebies until suddenly you can be doing the paids. And that doesn't mean the freebies are going to stop asking, right? They're going to keep calling. And so throughout my work with Mythbusters, with Sidejinks, with Discovery, I continue getting offers to come and be a PA and to come and be a wardrobe designer and to do all these things. And so it's been actually the 2 jobs that I've had to turn down that were the hardest was while doing Sidejinks. I got a call from a friend of mine that does wardrobe who was working on Westworld. And she was going to have to go back to school, and she was a wardrobe assistant on Westworld. And she's like, hey, I need to find someone to fill for me for a week. I know you can never do a full season, but can you come and do a week? And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm looking at my director, and I'm like, can I ask my director if I cannot host for a week so I can go and do wardrobe? And I'm like, okay, no, I can't do that. And then when I was doing Mythbusters Junior last summer, I got a call from a PA friend of mine who actually, he worked on the very first ever Get On Shoots shot with me. He was an extra. And we became friends because he normally second ADs, but what he does is he'll go and he'll be an extra, or he'll do a production assistant to get the connections to be able to second AD. And he called me because he was working on the Orville and they needed a wardrobe assistant. And so again, I'm in San Francisco, and I'm looking at everyone on the team, and I'm like, oh, how do I do both of these things? So you get a lot of these really, as your name gets out there and circulates, you're going to get a lot of these really big offers from big shows like Orville and Westworld and Mythbusters and stuff. But you gotta choose which direction you're in, I guess, and stick with whatever commitment you've made.
Yeah, there's only one you.
Yep.
So, and that's what I love about what we're doing. We're planting so many seeds in so many different areas. And, it's great to have all this work coming in, and it's great to turn it down because you're not available. And then they will call again. Gives them the impression that, oh, she's good, she's in demand. Can you list some of these shows? I mean, just you did some of them, but can you just try to give us a big long list of everything?
Yeah, I grabbed my resume so I would have it.
There you go.
So I've done I did a bunch of annual campaigns with TJ Maxx, which is their spring, their fall, their summer, all those lines. I've done AT&T commercials, Mirbetrick commercials, which anyone that's done pharma, they pay really well. So if you can get into pharma commercials, they're always great. I've done a lot of indie series, so one that was called Going Postal in LA, The Don't Tell Show, Undercover in LA, Work It Out. I've done quite a few feature films as wardrobe designers, so Odious, Open, Slasher, A Whole New Irving, which hopefully is going to be coming out on Netflix soon. And then just a lot of other things. It got hard because around the time that I was starting to get really big network offers, I was also getting big network offers on the acting and hosting side. So it's kind of like when I have time, I would pop in and out. So most of the people that know me now in the industry know if you need a solid day player to fill in for you, I'm the one to call. But most of the time, because of my shooting season, I'm not able to be there the full time.
Yeah, so the network offers were like for TV shows for wardrobe assistant, right? And then you're
no, for hosting. So I was, yes, so I was getting secondary offers to come in to do wardrobe, and also even national commercials. I still will like do regular production assisting because they pay so well and they do overtime. So my friends that are production coordinators and production supervisors on commercials here in LA know that if they need a good PA for pre-pro or production, to just give me a call and I'll be there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine how it's like, call this girl, she can do anything. I mean, she works in everything. She works in casting, she works in wardrobe, she works in, you know, you got camera, you can work, you just actor, everything. You're so multifaceted. That's so super awesome. And this all came from her own hard work, you know. It's not, she's the one that's like, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. Okay, so let's see. Let me look at my questions. Is that okay? I'll ask you some questions.
Yeah.
Here? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, let's see. We already answered. When did you start Friends in Film? About 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
And what made you decide to get involved with this program?
So Friends in Film, it was actually, I think it was an ad. I want to say it was an ad that popped up on Facebook at the time. And I was like, well, this seems really cool. And so I got into kind of the free modules and was like sitting there, and like you definitely sold it for me, like your personality, and like you just had so much energy. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want what she's got. Like, this is amazing. Like, I just want that energy. And I did fight it. Like you said, I was like, oh, there's enough information here that I think I could do this. I think I could kind of get this. But it ended up being one of those things that the secret sauce, you know, was getting into the full program and really getting to learn from it. And I think it was a lot of these calls with the mentors and talking with them and really hearing from them about like what it did to change their lives. That helped me realize that it was worth it to invest in the time and invest in the money and figure out, you know, okay, like I'm going to have to take time off of some of these other jobs, which in a way is like investing that money that I would have made, like going and just sitting on, you know, on a day job, to be able to really get deep down into this material and learn it well enough to be able to apply it so that then hopefully I can launch to those next ones. So I think as I started to really see the materials and talk with all the mentors, it made it very easy to understand that it was a worthwhile investment. It was something that was really going to help get me to where I wanted to be next.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of actors don't do this. So, you know, a lot of actors don't follow this way that we're teaching, getting inside and meeting all these people to get connected and getting all this exposure to all these different departments. So you have so many options, and you can talk about anything, and you can relate with people, and therefore they can feel connected to you, and then they want to help you and give you opportunities. So I'm assuming that's happened quite a bit, where people are like, oh, I love you, and they give you opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, so when I was talking about the TJ Maxx commercials, I ended up PAing with another girl who, she told me, she's like, I don't normally PA. And I was like, well, I don't normally PA either. And I was like, but and we both like laughed and we're like, but commercials pay so well for PAing, why wouldn't you? And so she was telling me, she's like, normally I'm actually a production coordinator. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so like we got to know each other over the summer. Like while we were working, we worked, I think like 5 different commercial shoots together with that production team, because it was a powerhouse female team and they loved us. And so they're like, okay, we're adding you both in. And we were their gingers is what they called us, because she was a redhead too. and we just really bonded. But you know, like it is in the industry, so often you'll make really great strong connections, but then you guys move on to the next set and you may not see each other for a little while until you have another set reunion. And I remember one day I got a call from her, and we had been staying in touch. Anytime I would get PA offers that I couldn't take, I would let her know, and she would do the same. And she called me one day, and I picked up, and I was shooting at the time. I was wardrobe designing my first indie film. And so we had been shooting at this point for 25 days, and we had our first day off coming up the next week. And she calls me and she goes, hey, what are you doing on this day? And it's the one day off I have. And I was like, actually, I finally get a day off from my indie film. She's like, really, do you want to work? And I was like, well, it's a Monday through Friday, so why not? Of course, though it's the work week. Like, what do you have? And she's like, well, I'm doing a Dannon commercial, and I need some featured extras, and I would love to have a redhead, but it's union, and you're the only union redhead that I know. She's like, I could take it to casting, but she's like, I'd rather just bring you in. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And so like my one day off that entire month, like I went to walk in the background of a Dannon commercial. And it's so funny because you just like see me walk through the background while the girl's like struggling with this scooter. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I walked away with like $600 for the day. And like, it was very little to do just because it's featured extra on a union shoot. So, and that's literally just because she liked me, because we had spent time together in the trenches, getting to know each other and talking just over lunches, because we were both runner PAs, so we had very little actually overlapping time in the offices. So,
and also you've gotten like getting into production. You got into casting. From casting, you made a lot of relationships inside casting. That was sort of more like what I'm looking for, is like opportunities for your career, like, and also, you know, through production work, you got into wardrobe. And then, of course, everybody wants to know how you got your job on Mythbusters. So,
So what I did when I first started the Get On Shoots method, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. So I just started to get to know everyone and help everyone. You know, like anytime I had a down moment, if I went to Crafty and I was getting a water, I would grab like 4 waters and I'd walk around and I'd give them to the people that I know never really get to leave set. And if I was going to grab a snack for me, I would grab a bunch of snacks and I'd walk around and I'd give them around. And it gave me the opportunity to talk to people and get to know what they were doing, and what skill sets they had, because I knew myself well enough to know what skills I already had coming into it. And I knew that I was coming into it a little bit later in the game. So I was like, okay, how can I use what I already have to be able to get where I want to go? And of course, at first, because I'm a builder and an engineer, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a grip, I'm going to be in props, I'm going to be in all this. And it turns out they're all really long apprenticeship programs, or they look at me as a 5-foot girl and are like, you want to be a grip? We could use someone stronger. And it's fine. But, you know, I did prove to them that I could do it. But so through that, I started making these connections, and over time started telling them like, well, I cosplay and I sew, and I've been doing wardrobe design for myself for a long time. Like, I'd love to like assist if you ever need anyone. And then with casting, because as an actor, I've been on the other side of it, and I've seen thousands of castings every week. I was like, well, casting, you know, that's something I could do, and it can't be that difficult to assist in. I mean, really, you're just helping them go through and weed out people. And so through my get on shoot methods, I met people that then were like, hey, you know, do you want to come along? Do you want to try this? Here's another free shoot. And so for wardrobe design, the way that I got into that was I had told a friend of mine that was a wardrobe designer that I was looking at PAing. She, of course, thought I meant personal assistanting. So she's like, you want to be a personal assistant? Like, what do you mean you want to be a personal assistant? I'm like, no, I want to be a production assistant. She's like, oh. So like, it does matter what the acronyms mean. So always like be clear, because she was trying to give me like actual personal assistant jobs. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But I went on because her husband was directing a short film. And so she's like, hey, you act. Do you want to come and be an actor on this and be an extra? And I'm like, okay. And so I went on that one, and that's where I met the guy that offered me the Orville assistant job later. And Sorry, it sounds like they are working on my roof above me. And so I think they actually are working on my roof. So I was on this short film shoot with him, and they just had us in this restaurant scene as extras. But then they needed to take the actors, and you could hear the lighting crew being like, "Oh, we really need to be able to light this next scene. We're gonna get behind." And so I was like, he nudged me because he'd been a second AD, and he's like, "Hey, do you wanna go offer to be a stand-in with me?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but sure." And so we went and we stood in for the actors, and that just meant that we were there so they could light based on us, and then the actors could just come straight in. And so then at the end of the day, he and I both were like, "Hey, if you guys need PAs, let us know." And they ended up calling me back because he wanted money and I didn't need money for it because I was still in my get on shoots free method part. And so I went and I just was their only set PA. And so I was helping everyone. I was helping audio, I was helping wardrobe, I was bringing waters, I was doing runs for lunches. And I just made myself 100% available to them. I don't think I stopped to sit down the entire day. But because of that, they're like, "Hey, do you want to keep doing this shoot with us?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I ended up doing 4 days with them. And it was great. And at the end of it, the director and producer sat down with me and they're like, "We never would have been able to do this without you. You're just so amazing. Thank you so much for your hustle. We'd love to include you in the next project we do." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. No worries." And a few months later, I actually ended up getting a check in the mail. That was it was $100 a day, but it was $100 a day I didn't expect to get from them. So I was really excited. But more than that, after that, the director went home and he talked to the friend of mine that was a wardrobe designer and was like, "She's really good. She hustles a lot." And they were about to have their first baby. So he's like, "If you want to train someone to be on set for you so that you can be home, on the days you need to be, she's the one." And so it was great because of that, she then started grooming me to be her wardrobe supervisor. So the indie film that I was on when the Dannon commercial came on was actually with her, and she didn't even she came to set the first day and the last day, but other than that, the whole 60-day shoot, I was the one on set. I was the one doing all the wardrobe. And it was great for me as an actor, especially because in wardrobe, you get a lot of access to the actors, and you get access when they're in downtime, when they're wanting to talk, because most of the time you don't talk to them unless they talk to you because they're concentrating on their lines. But I learned more on that set than I learned in 2 years of acting school. They were telling me who they got their start with agents-wise in LA as feeder agents. They were telling me where they took their acting courses that are seen better from casting directors. They were telling me which casting directors to stay away from, which casting directors to go for. They were telling me about workshops that they do. And so within a very short amount of time, I went from having no idea what was legitimate and what was a scam in LA as far as acting courses and classes and casting director workshops and stuff, to knowing what these people that are booking Hulu shows and Fox shows and TLC, what real actors were doing. And so I was just taking notes nonstop so that I would know exactly who to go to and what to do with my acting side of it. And then from a casting director standpoint, that happened because I had put my resume up on Stage 32 for production assisting, like we do on the Get on Shoots method. I put it on Mandy and all these places. But I had also realized that Stage 32 had a place for acting as well, so I toggled both. I was like, "Oh, I'm an actor and a production assistant." And so I ended up getting cast on a web series with that one. And so what they did was they cast the two leads, and then they were like, "Hey, we're gonna all hands on deck, do the rest of this. Do you have any skills?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll take a stab at casting." It was a skill I wanted to gain. And so I went and I started just doing castings with LA Castings and with all of the different casting websites that you can use. And it was my first major credit because I had cast an entire series, not just the series extras, but also the series regulars, the features, everyone that we had, the day players. And so when I started PAing that TJ Maxx commercial and they were like, "Hey, we're going to be doing a lot with casting. I was like, oh, I actually did, in pre-pro, because there's no the wardrobe with commercials especially is usually done with the client, so it's a lot harder to kind of sneak over there during pre-pro. You can do it during production, which is when I would normally make the move over, but during pre-pro I'd be like, oh yeah, I've got casting experience if you guys need an assistant. And so they would send me, and I would get to be in the casting rooms, and I would get to meet the casting directors, and then I would get to listen to what the critiques that they were giving, both to the actors and when the actors were gone. And then I started learning that while your ability to act and your talent means a lot, there are a lot more levers in play. Like there's the numbers game of how many people they need, what type of people they need, what diversity they need, what age group they need, all of these different things. So it started to take the weight off of me when I would go into casting rooms myself as an actor. I'd be like, oh, this isn't all about me. So as long as I go and I show everything that I have, then if I don't get it, I at least won. If I win the room, I at least won the room, and it helped me to feel like I was worthy enough to be in the room, I guess. So it really changed my game as an actor, because now suddenly I had confidence in knowing that I should actually be in the room if I get to the room.
That's one of the things that I love to tell people is if you're an actor, there can be so much fear around acting. Fear is with all of us, but there can be so much around it when you're like, oh, I've got to get this thing. But when you're just there all the time and you're on set and you're meeting these people and you see what this is from the inside, you're like, oh, I can kind of relax on this. Either way, I'm going to be on set. And you can see how people get chosen. It's not necessarily on the talent. It's more just like you go there, you do your best job, and then you leave. Like they say, book the room.
Yep. And it was funny, I now, through connections that I had made, I was introduced to my current commercial agent, and I walked into an auditioning room, and I auditioned, and as I was leaving, the casting director grabbed me. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, I know you. Why do I know you? And it was funny because at first, because Mythbusters was, at this point had been airing for a couple years with me, I was like, well, do you watch Mythbusters? He's like, no. And I'm like, and I stopped and I looked at him for a minute, and I'm like, oh, I actually assisted you. You did a TJ Maxx commercial, and I assisted you for casting on it. And he's like, oh yeah, you were with Angela and them. And I'm like, yeah. And it was like kind of this fun thing, because we went from I was just like a face in a room to him at first, and one of the many people he was having to see, to suddenly there was a connection. And so I got the call back on that one, and it was really exciting, because I feel like even though I had already delivered and done well in the room, I feel like it did help a little bit to have that additional connectivity to the casting director.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now you probably know a lot of casting directors now.
I do. I've met a lot of the top casting directors in LA, and I would not have met them had it not been for doing the production side. So most of the big casting directors, up until recently with getting my new commercial agent, I would have never gotten into the rooms that these casting directors were in without having met them through production, because they're at the level that you can't get to them if you're self-submitting as an actor. And so it opened doors that, had I not met them with production, I would have never actually had those doors open on my own, because they're at a level where you can't even find their contact information. They're only approached by agents. And so the way that I would try to meet them, though, is casting director workshops. That's a good way to do it. But you can, it was definitely a big bonus to be able to have met them one-on-one through assisting.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of Friends in Film, is to get into these rooms and meet these people personally. And it's kind of like a back door or front door, whatever you want to call it, but we're getting in through production. That's why it's an accelerator, because you're not going to meet it'll take you years to ever get in those rooms through the traditional way. Can you talk about the traditional way versus the Friends in Film way?
So I started out the traditional way when I was in the Carolinas. And so what that normally looks like is you go to some form of finishing school, or you go to some form, you join into an acting collective or a theater group. You have to start actually refining your skills as an actor. And through those, you start making connections with other actors that may be also interested in other parts of film or other parts of theater, so that, with over time, you can start getting work that you're not paid for, but like you're doing short films or you're doing friends projects or you're doing these things where you're able to then start actually getting clips of yourself so that you can start adding to what will become your reel, and you're adding to what will become your resume. And then once your resume and your reel are strong enough, you can start really shopping those to agents to try to find a prospective agent. Now, what I do that I found is kind of a level up thing that a lot of other actors don't do is I track my statistics. So because I put into castings, what I do is I track what are the casting directors I'm putting into, how many times am I putting in, how many times is it leading to an audition, how many times is it leading to a callback, how many times is it leading to a booking, and I actually track all of my booking statistics so that when I walk into an agent, I have my headshots, I have my reel, I have my resume, and then I have my booking statistics, and I say, okay, I've made relationships with these casting directors by being in their rooms and multiple times. I've booked this many callbacks, and from that many callbacks, I booked this many final jobs, and then they have my resume to see the actual jobs as well. And I find that as an actor, you know, the traditional way like that, you kind of have to work to that, and you have to hope that you get an agent. And it doesn't always happen. Like I spent a long time in the Southeast without an agent, and then ended up going in and doing a showcase, which is where you and a bunch of actors come, and there's like a group of agents that are there and agent scouts, and you'll perform your monologue and you'll perform this whole like routine with them. And then if they like you, they'll call you and they'll offer you like a certain amount of time to trial with them. And then if you do well and they see that they can get you a number of auditions and callbacks, then they're actually going to represent you, and then they'll start putting you out. And but during that, you still have to continue. You have to continue honing your skills and doing projects with other people. And it works if you have the right connections. But again, it takes a lot of time. So like when I moved to California from North Carolina, my agent didn't represent out here. And so I got out here, and there are thousands of agents out here. So you don't know, there's just as many legitimate agents as there are scam artist agents. So you don't know who to trust. You don't know what to do. I got burned a couple of times when I first got out here by people that said that they were agents, and then they suddenly would be like, oh, you have to go get your headshots with this exact photographer, and you have to go to this exact class. And anytime they're telling you exacts, that they're giving kickbacks to someone, or they're getting kickbacks, and they're probably not someone that you want to work with long term. And so I had the benefit that when I came out here, I already had a strong resume, I already had a strong reel, but I had no connection. So I had no way to keep things fresh. I had no way to keep adding new reel footage as I was gaining new acting skills. And I had no way to continue building my resume. And now all of my statistics were out the window because they were all for East Coast casting agents. And so I started to try to rebuild that, realizing it was going to take a while. And so when I found Friends in Film, I had already been working for a year out here trying to make inroads and just really hitting walls everywhere I went, because most people were like, well, you have to have a referral. You can't get into our agency without a referral. And it's like, if you don't know other actors that are with them, then you can't get that. So when I found Friends in Film, I'm like, you know what, this will at least make it so I can start making connections in the industry. Because at the time, I was doing my engineering job, I was working from home with a Houston office, so I wasn't meeting people on a daily basis that might lead me to the industry either. So by being on set, I now had access to all of these actors, and not just actors that were at like the higher echelons, but actors that were day players, actors that were featured extras, actors that were background, that could actually sit down and talk to me about who they went through, so I could find the right level. Because it's like when you come out, everyone's like, oh, go for these are the top 3 agencies. Well, those are the top 3 agencies that only represent A-list movie stars that have won awards, so trying to figure out who those lower levels are that then become the feeder tube to the upper And that guidance through that I gained only because of Friends in Film is what enabled me to get into my first acting collective that led to my first smaller agent, that then led to my next agent, that then led me to my agent that I have now, who is one of the top commercial booking agents. So it's one of those things that it changed the game for me because, one, it made it a lot faster. I mean, I went from struggling for a full year trying to make connections and find people to within 3 months knowing exactly what classes to get into, what casting director workshops to do, and what agents to talk to and start auditioning for. So it was a real game changer.
What were the chain of events that led you to the Mythbusters?
Yeah, so Mythbusters is fun. So I am a chemical and biomolecular engineer. I've been working in my field for over a decade, and so I do have a skill set that marries well with the Mythbusters franchise. So it's not like I came out and was just acting or just a person that was like, I want to be a Mythbuster. So my skills were something that really helped in the application process. But honestly, again, it was only because of Friends in Film that I even applied. Because at the time I was doing the Get On Shoots method, and so I was looking at IMDb Pro, I was looking at all of these places I wouldn't normally look, and suddenly I came across this casting that was like, we're looking for the next Mythbuster. And I was like, there is no way that this is legitimate. Like, this cannot be real. And so I was like, I don't know. So I started using the Friends in Film tools that I had, and like the same way that we build like our actual magic list, I started going through and being like, okay, who's the production company and who's the director and are they associated with it? And I was able to connect all of the dots, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm going to apply to this. Okay. So then I like put in for it, and I told them in my application, like I did all my technical skills, but I also put, I was like, I'm also, at the time I had become a union actor. So I'm like, I'm also a union actor. I'm also a wardrobe assistant. I also do, or wardrobe designer. I also do production assistant. I'm happy to help like clean the floors and go get lunch in between if you need it. Like I basically told them I would do anything and everything. And because of that, out of over 10,000 applicants, I was one of the 10 people selected to come and compete on their competition show. And then from there, I did what I do every day when I go to a set as a production assistant. Like I would deliver my stuff 110%, but then as soon as there was a break moment, I would go get water and I would bring it for everyone. And I would go and get food and I'd bring it for everyone. And I just kind of kept doing what I would normally do when I'm on the production side of things. And it made the production team just fall in love with me, you know, because they weren't used to that. They weren't, you know, used to talent taking the time to care if they had a water, you know, and it's because a lot of talent's really busy. So I understand that, but I had the bandwidth and I had the time. And so from there, you know, through the actual competition and through using my engineering skills, I became the only 2 MVP winner and the only female finalist. And so because of that, I've had the last 4 seasons with them, most recently with Mythbusters Junior with Adam Savage and the kids. So that's been a whirlwind. But again, I would have never actually applied had I not had a way to be like, is this real? Let me see if it's real. Like, I was like, I don't want to invest this time if this is just a scam and they're going to like steal all my information or something. Well, so I was really happy about the magic list method.
Yeah. And in addition to that, look at how you approach them. You said, hey, I come from production. I also know wardrobe. I can do this and this and this. And did they say that made a difference for you getting selected?
They did. They said that my skills and my background and knowledge of production really helped me. I also, like, they used all of that too. On every single season, I've had to be doing wardrobe design and sewing stuff. And, like, I'm also always, like, helping with, like, I actually helped on not only Mythbusters, but also on Side Jinx that I did with Johnny Galecki. Like, we needed to cast day players. And the producer was like, I don't want to have to hire a casting assistant just for this. And I was like, give me 5 minutes. I'll get you a whole bunch of people to look at. And like, I put up a casting notice, and within a day he had everyone he needed to like fill out the whole season. So it's something that it saves production money. And anytime you can save production money, everyone's happy.
Okay. What was that for again? That you did the casting?
That was for Side Jinx, which was also a Discovery Channel show. It was a science prank show that I did with Johnny Galecki. And so we would have the person we were pranking, but then we also needed the people that built the universe around, you know, this fake world that they were coming into. And so all of those people we needed to actually cast. And so I just set up a casting call for them and got everyone that they needed.
Wow, you guys. Yeah.
I also brought in a bunch of my friends. I brought in a bunch of the actors I knew and a bunch of the production people I knew because it was a union show. So I had a lot of friends that were really phenomenal actors and working really hard in production to pay their bills and everything. And I was like, hey, why don't you come on and be a featured day player and get one of, you know, actually get Taft-Hartley in. And so a couple of them were actually able to go union by just like staying connected and knowing me and me knowing what their actual ultimate goal was and them knowing what mine was, you know.
Oh my goodness. This is so good. So it really illustrates just hearing these stories of how when you guys build up your skills in other areas like wardrobe, like production, like actually understanding production, not just being a PA, but that gives you the understanding of production. You know, like you're taking responsibility for understanding production. Okay, so understanding production, working in wardrobe as a stylist and taking that responsibility. And then also, hey, I'll do casting sessions. Now you got the casting experience. All these things have made her so valuable. She stands out so much over any other actor that's there. It's just like, I'm just here to do my lines. Now she knows a lot of actors that all they know is acting, but she's just chosen to have a much broader ability. And I believe, and it sounds like you're giving us concrete examples of how this has helped you a lot in your career.
Mm-hmm. I think, and again, it comes back to what we talked about earlier. This helps build my safety net. Like I'm able to be available to take acting classes and to go to casting calls and to do all this because I work in production when I'm not working on set, and I'm able to then have the flexibility to be able to be physically available, but also to monetarily not be worried, not to have to work every single night, late shift, waiting tables because I need to make ends meet. Like I'm able to make more than that, like what I would make even on the best night waiting a table by being a production assistant on a major commercial, or, you know, by calling up my friends. Like anytime I'm off season with Mythbusters, I call up my art director friends, I call up my wardrobe designer friends, and I'm like, hey, I'm available, let me know if you need anyone. Like I'm, you know, and even like, so Jake Tremblay and I, he was talking with you guys for a while. Like he and I are become like very close. Like when I first started wardrobe designing and I first landed Mythbusters, I had met him because of the program. And then we ended up on the same shoot together where I was wardrobe designing and he was an extra. And I was like, hey, do you want to learn how to do wardrobe assistance? Because I need a wardrobe supervisor on set when I have to be on this other set hosting. And we basically did that for the next couple years while he was also building up his experience on the art director side of it and set designer side of it. And so now I call him and I'm like, hey, if you need someone to take something apart for a day, let me know, you know. And he'll call me and be like, hey, we need a bunch of flats taken down, or we need a bunch of flats built. You want to come and spend a day just swinging a hammer? And I'm like, yes, I do. Yeah, I want to be there.
Wow.
And we do the opposite. So
oh my
we
gosh.
stay in touch.
I didn't know that he did anything with wardrobe design, or wardrobe assisting, I mean.
Yeah, he actually did quite a few of the films that I designed the first year that I was with Mythbusters. He was my on-set supervisor. So he did everything. He would like take all the clothes that I had already gotten, and he would go and like make sure that everyone looked great and kept in continuity and everything. So
when you work as a producer, production supervisor, tell us your day rate. What's your day rate when you do What's your day rate when you've done that? What's your day rate when you do wardrobe stylist? Give us some of this money stuff so we know.
So if I do PA if I'm PAing on a commercial set and they have overtime and they have flex pay, like the normal rate is like $250, $350, but then it can go up. Like on Lemonade, I was getting like $600 a day because we were working such long days. And then for producing, which I do now because I learned the production side so well, and I have a friend that owns a production company in New York, and she ended up needing a production coordinator / producer to help her for a while. I was making $950 a day. And then from a wardrobe standpoint, when I was designing, because I was mostly designing indies, I was making about $550 a day. When I got the offers for the assisting, it was about the same. So it definitely pays to get on the bigger features and stuff long term. And then like when I went to go help Jake the other day to take down like a bunch of flats, I got $450 for the day. And it was for me a really easy day because I'm just swinging a hammer all day and moving gears. So
it's easy for you to swing a hammer. I see. Okay. Yeah. Not for me. I would have like bruises and oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, so we can see the kind of money you're making. How about as an actor?
Oh, as an actor, it's a lot. So my minimum day rate to get me on a set with hosting, because of what I've done and the brand I am now with Mythbusters, is $1,500. And then depending if it's a non-union shoot, most of the time I'm getting $3,500 if I'm there every single day.
Per day.
And then per day. And then if it's union, then it goes up from there. But we shoot a lot less days when it's union because I don't do as much work. So, which is nice because I also get insurance with union.
Okay.
So
you're in a really nice, you and Jake are both in a very nice, this downtown loft is awesome. Yeah. Somebody said to me on the email after watching Jake, he's like, yeah, he makes $1,000 a day, but how often does he work? Maybe you can make $1,000 a day, but how often does he work? I'm like, well, look at his downtown loft. He's working all the freaking time.
I can tell you because he's my neighbor and we hang out when he's not working, and he's working all the time. It's been nice during the pandemic because I get to actually Skype and talk with him because he's not working right now because no one really in LA is working right now. But I'm working, but it's different. But so it's one of those things that he works all the time. I have to try to book him out a month in advance if I want to meet up for a dinner. It's crazy.
Yeah.
He's doing very well. I'm very proud of Jake.
Yeah, me too. And you're doing very well. You're working nonstop. You're pretty much the same. It took me 2 weeks to get on your schedule.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard right now because I'm one of the few people that during this pandemic has landed a new acting job. Which luckily I know the whole production side because I'm having to run all sides of the camera while my director just zooms into me, so when I'm something's not working, he's like, I don't know. And so I'm trying to figure out all this technical stuff that normally I don't play with the cameras.
Well, you're learning a new skill. Are you kidding me? It's what you do. It's what you do.
It's pretty cool. I've been learning a whole lot about just remote filming and mixing, and I think it's really neat, the stuff that I'm learning about right now.
So what are you doing? What is this job that you're doing?
So I'm hosting a science show for kids that's specifically going on because of kids being in quarantine. And so we teach them things like physics, and then we do at-home demos with them with things that they already will have in their living rooms or kitchens. And so I've been doing that for the last 8 weeks. And then now, because my background is in infectious disease, they had me write a 6-unit course on COVID specifically for 8 to 11-year-olds, which is kind of hard to teach an 8 to an 11-year-old the level of biology it takes. But we're shooting that right now, and it's been really fun. I'm using a lot of candy in my DIY demos, so I don't know how happy the parents are going to be. But I think the kids are going to love it, so...
Well, you're doing what they're interested in. You're showing them, it gets their attention, so there's a reason why.
Yeah, and at least they get very excited about the sugar, so.
Yeah, so an acting job out of thin air. Probably not thin air, though. How did you get this job?
So the director for this, it was a director on my first season of Mythbusters, and he is from England originally, and so this program is through Mel Science, which is an English-based science program, and so he got linked up with them, and then when they were telling him what they basically are doing master's classes for kids on science. when he found that out, he's like, I have the perfect host for this that you guys should do. And so he called me up and was like, hey, do you want to do this? And at the time, he was like, for 2 weeks. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks. And then about a weekend, they're like, hey, we want to do this for 3 months. Would you do it for 3? And I'm like, hey, as long as the pandemic is going on and I can't leave my house, I am 100% yours.
Wow, that's awesome. And is it good money?
It is. It's $4.50 a day. So it's not as much as I normally would get, but it's also for a nonprofit. So, and it's really good exposure because Mel Science is one of the like largest at-home science package companies. So,
oh, this is awesome. So
yeah.
It sounds like all your opportunities these days is all through connections. People that have worked with you or talking about you, referring you. Is that the way that it is now?
I would say the majority of my work now is through connections, and if it's not my direct connections, it's like the second down the line or the third down the line hearing about me through someone else that knows me and really enjoyed working with me. And so it's been really nice in that way because like I still am also trying to directly connect and do all of that, but I would say 9 times out of 10 when something comes in, it's someone that I've known for a while or someone that knew me, recommended me for it.
Yeah. Well, it's no surprise. We all know that the industry runs on connections. I mean, that's how once you get in and we get going and you're working, it's all connections. It just is all connections. But the thing that our program is doing is accelerating you to get these connections, which can take years or never happen. One of the things that I talk about in my calls, I talk about how difficult it is when you're a new actor and you don't have any of these connections yet, and you have not worked in production, and you're not known as an actor, and you contact people that are professionals, but they're nice, but they don't really have they don't really give you that much of the time of the day because you're not one of us yet. And it feels like people are trying to keep you out or not taking you seriously, even though you've done a lot with your classes and you've done a lot for yourself. I believe it's very tough mentally when you're on the outside trying to get inside. But once you get inside, now it's a whole nother ball game because people are just like, oh my gosh, I love you. And they also love what you've done for yourself, like being in production and working. So can you talk a little bit about that, like how, and I'm not sure if you can remember, but how it feels, or what maybe you know from other actors, how it feels and how hard it is to be on the outside versus once you get inside, you're doing the most important thing, which is building all these connections that really gets your career going.
Yeah, I think so. That first year in LA for me was a real struggle, and it was so hard because I knew I had the resume, I knew I had the reel, I knew I had an agent. And it was like I just could not get in the door. And it's like the people that would let me in the door, like I said, I kept getting burned. They weren't actually legitimate connections. And so it was so difficult to be able to make that branch in. And it was really disheartening. It was like, am I not meant to do this? Should I be trying something else? And I even had it where I knew some actors that were big actors here that I had met, that they just were at a level where they weren't comfortable because they didn't know me yet. They didn't know me from a production standpoint. They didn't know if I was going to show up and work. They didn't know if I was just, talking to them about acting because it was a whim. And so I think that was even harder too, was to like have these connections that were connected and not really even be able to utilize them because a lot of them too were at the tier that was much higher. And then they just didn't know me. So I think once though I started working in Friends in Film and I started being able to talk to them about like the sets I was on and what I was doing, suddenly they were like, oh wow, like you're working really hard, like you're someone I would actually put my name behind, that I would be okay with like offering a handshake in. And so like I said, that's how I got my current agent, was a friend of mine that had been doing really, really well that for a long time, started seeing me, what I was doing in these other shows and on these other sets, and suddenly was like, it's time that you have an actual agent here. I mean, because I've been here for 5-6 years now, and I just landed this really good commercial agent because of that about 2 years ago. So it's still, even being on the inside, it took a little bit of time to get to the right level of agent, but I at least got into the feeder agents, which then enabled me to get closer and closer to where now it wasn't a big leap for someone to be like, oh yeah, I'll refer you in, like, you've been doing this. They were able to have kind of some examples, and they felt like they could respect the work I had done.
Yeah, yeah. They need to be able to sell you when they're putting their name behind you to refer you. They need some meat to sell, some content. Yeah. So was this another actor that referred you to their agent, or to several agents, or how did that work?
It was another actor that referred me. We're in an acting collective together, and so because I knew how good he was as an actor, as I was casting things, I would bring him in to everything that I was casting, like anything that had a role that matched him. So he also knew that it wasn't a one-way street. Like, I wasn't one of those people that was just like, oh, you should just be giving me everything. Like, I'm always one of those people that if I get offered something and I can't take it, or it's at a point where I know I'm not going to gain a skill from it, but I think it's still a really good job, like, I'll find someone else that's just starting out that's going to gain a lot from it, or that's available during that time. And so when I would see casting things that would come up, even if they didn't match me, like even now, like if I see casts come up and they're for like a girl with brown hair, I send them to another friend that I have. Like, I'm always sharing any job things I have. Mm-hmm. And so he and I had been connected for a while because of that, off and on. And then once the shows closed, he was like, okay, you're at a level now where my agent actually would see you because you're booking the kind of stuff that he requires minimally for you to book. And so that enabled that handshake to happen.
Oh my goodness. This is very similar. I don't know if you guys picked this up, but this is very similar with our conversation with Jake and Alex, where we're talking about how you're making relationships with people who are your peers. And you get to a level where you're able to, you're really good at finding castings, finding work, digging it up, and you send it to your peers, and that makes them want to help you. Since we are so good at this with Friends in Film, from our techniques, we can find anything, and we're finding stuff all the time because that's what we're trained to do. Other people are not thinking like this. So we use what we have to offer that's of value, which is jobs, which is ways of digging up this work and offering it to peers and that can then send it back to us.